Hello.
Back again.
Yes, sir.
I'm excited. It's been a couple weeks since we've been live.
Yeah, it has. It has. It's got a little bit more danger to it this time.
Indeed. Yeah, last time we got shut out of YouTube. What was it, like 30 minutes before the show went on?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, because I made the stream, and so the stream was set to go live, and then we get the content violation in between the stream going live and us actually going live.
Yeah, I saw the notification, but it was so soon before the show. I didn't even have time to tell you, and I didn't even have a chance to read what it said. I didn't know we were suspended.
Mhm.
We were suspended. But we're off suspension now. It's a new world. Twitter is now owned by a good man. We hope. And this will all be different, you know?
Mhm.
No longer. And then YouTube will be taken over by a good man next, and then everything will be fine.
Yeah. We just got to keep hoping that YouTube continues to censor and continues to make their platform worse so Elon can buy it at a cheap price.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. Drive down that price.
Yep.
YouTube, keep fucking with people who are just talking about the news.
Mhm. Oh, man, that's what's so crazy is we still don't know if we're okay to talk about what we are talking about, right? Like, we've just been getting away with it, you know, but we're not sure if we're actually in the clear.
Well, there's the C word, which we're pretty sure we can't even say. Although today I just heard news, some podcaster I was listening to said that they've loosened the rules on the C word on YouTube, but I don't know if that's true. But it was the case that you basically, if you were of a particular politics, that you could not utter the word without being taken down from YouTube. Then there's the U word, which we have, of course, talked about a lot. And I don't know. I mean, there have been I think we were demonetized once for talking about what's happening in that part of Europe. And I know many people have. I mean, others have been taken down for saying the wrong things, I guess, about this thing that's happening in Europe over there. And I don't know what else. I mean, there's all sorts of things we can get taken down for, but we'll see. Let's test the waters, see how it goes.
And the worst part is, like what happened with the last violation, is that any of your content can be retroactively taken down as the rules change.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So you're never in the clear. Yeah.
Yeah, so Robert Reich, the brilliant ex-secretary of labor under Clinton, who's my neighbor in Berkeley, is a professor here at UC Berkeley, just tweeted, or no, he had a whole article. I'm sorry, he wrote an entire article about how free speech is what all dictators have always wanted, and that's why what's happening with Elon Musk at Twitter is just the precursor to a dictatorship, because of course dictators always want free speech, and that's just, I mean, he's teaching our children, that guy, Robert Reich. I mean, he was Secretary of Labor. He was in the cabinet of the White House, the presidency in the 1990s. Very powerful, influential, wealthy man with hundreds of thousands of Twitter followers, maybe in the millions. And he says that dictators dream of, I think he said dictators dream of free speech. I mean, I don't know. So when I was coming up, Michael, so you're way too young to remember this, but when I was coming up, you know, liberals were the ones who talked about free speech. That was the ACLU. The ACLU was a bunch of liberals, and they were great champions of free speech all through my childhood and into my adulthood. And I learned about the First Amendment and the doctrine of freedom of speech and the culture of freedom of speech and how important free speech is from liberals. For decades and decades, since World War II, they've been telling us that free speech is essential, and they are its great defenders. And it was the conservatives, the right-wingers, who were the opponents of free speech, who wanted to ban pornography and things like that, right? They weren't so keen on free speech, the right wing, but now it's all flipped around. But I look at these liberals who are so well educated, have every resource, like Robert Reich, so smart, went to the best schools. They just know everything. And they've forgotten that freedom of speech was their cause. It was their cause. Now here's why. Here's why it was their cause and it no longer is. The reason it was their cause was that from 1917 or thereabouts to about 2016, so 99 years, for 99 years, liberals ran the world. They were dominant. Progressives is what I'm talking about. Since the presidency of Woodrow Wilson, progressives have set the agenda, and they established every major institution of the American global empire, both here and abroad. And after World War II, that only became more powerful. Progressives really ran the show after World War II. They're the ones who constructed what's called the liberal world order, or the liberal post-war order. All of it, the World Bank, GATT, NATO, NAFTA, all the big things, progressives. The Civil Rights Movement, the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, progressives. But of course, they were so powerful that the Republican Party voted for those bills too. The Republicans, the right-wingers, have towed the line on all the major causes of liberals since World War II. So they could afford to promote free speech because they were unchallenged, because Republicans were the junior rival in American government. Republicans have never set the stage. They've established no institutions. They never created the culture we all live in. Progressives did. So of course, they were all about free speech because everyone believed what they believed until 2016 comes along. And then, oh my God, the rug gets pulled out from under them, and they see that half the country hates them and is capable of electing a president and senators and congresspeople who also hate them and who want to overthrow the whole liberal post-war order. The whole thing. And so now, oh no, we can't be for free speech anymore because our power is being challenged. That's what it's about. It's not that liberals, Robert Reich forgot that he used to be a champion of free speech. It's that he no longer can afford to allow free speech because there are too many people in this country and in the world who hate his guts and hate everything he stands for and are talking on platforms like Twitter and YouTube. And so you can't allow that anymore because for the first time since 1917, progressives' power is being challenged. Their hegemony, which has been global, is being challenged from within and by populist right-wing movements around the world, from Brazil to Austria to Germany to France. So they can't. They no longer can be for free speech. They are no longer, the Democrats are no longer the free speech party. They are now the party of censorship, and they're very proud of it. And this is why they are talking the way they are about Elon Musk's taking over Twitter. It's not okay for them. To them, that is the vehicle for dictatorship. Dictatorship means simply anything that's not liberal, that's opposed to the liberal order. So yes, free speech does lead to a challenge to the liberal order. It is the dream of us dictators, those of us who want to challenge the liberal order. It is our dream. It's just that we're not dictators.
Well, Thad, don't you know that if we allow free speech, then crazy people are going to break into Paul Pelosi's house and hit him over the head with a hammer?
Yes. Okay. So are we segueing into that news item? Because
I went to broadcasting school. That's called a segue. Yeah.
Yes, it is. That was beautiful. It was seamless, actually. Yep. Well, okay. So do you mind if we tell the story, a little story about you and me?
Oh, yeah. We did some investigative journalism here.
Well, no. Hold on. So this is what we did on Sunday. So Michael was here in the Bay Area visiting, and we hung out on Sunday. And I picked him up.
Real quick.
Yes.
For tax purposes, that was the first official meeting of the Unregistered Academy staff.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
For tax purposes? Okay, sure. I'll take your word for it. Yes. Yes, government man. It was our first meeting, I promise. First business meeting. So I picked you up at Fisherman's Wharf, San Francisco, and you told me that the car you and your buddies had been driving around in had been broken into, and that your buddy's laptop had been stolen out of it. And I said to you, welcome to San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
And you said, yeah, I'm getting the full experience. I said, well, we're not done yet, dude. We're going to go investigate another crime. And we headed up the hill. It's just about a 5-minute drive up the hill from Fisherman's Wharf to Pacific Heights. And we went to the Pelosi's house. And we investigated Pelosi's house and saw that there is just no way to get into that house unless you have a key or unless someone lets you in. It's a fortress, like all the houses, all the mansions in Pacific Heights. And I still, because of that, and for many other reasons, have many doubts about whether that was a real crime, at least the way it's been portrayed. So we have real crime in San Francisco, like what you were the victim of. Happens every day. Basically everybody I know here has had something stolen from them or been attacked in the last couple of years. But there's also imaginary crimes, or at least crimes that are very different than how they're talked about, like what happened in the Pelosi's house that fateful night. And we can talk about that, but it is one is constantly trying to ascertain what's really happening in one's own world. I mean, I live in the Bay Area, and it's interesting. The headlines are always, this murder, that rape, this robbery, this gang robbery, this looting goes on damn near every day in the Bay Area. But also in the San Francisco Chronicle, they'll have the headline right after that that'll say Republicans are exaggerating the crime statistics to gain advantage in the elections, etc. Right? It's not true that crime is going up. Now, I want to say the right wing is in fact exaggerating. So you can look at the graph of crime, of violent crime in the United States since 1990. And most people know this by now, that crime peaked in American history in the mid-90s. Around 95, 96 was the highest crime rate recorded in American history. That was the crack epidemic, bad stuff going on. And then it declined every single year, until 2020. Now, it has gone up since 2020, since the lockdowns, but it's gone up not a lot. So, I mean, if you look at the graph, it's still like there's this huge bulge in the 90s, and then it goes way, 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 way down, and then there's this little uptick in the last 2 years. Yes, in big cities, there's been more crime in the last 2 years than there were in the previous 2 years, but it would be hard to even notice. I mean, the numbers are really not that different. It is not anywhere near what it was in the 1990s, but Republicans are talking as if it is. And, this has been Trump's thing since the get-go. I mean, you might say I think even before immigration, crime was probably his main issue that he talked about. The Central Park 5, 6, how many was it? That was way back when he was taking out big ads in the New York Times about giving them the death penalty. New Yorkers, kind of like working class conservative New Yorkers, for them, for decades, since the 1970s, 60s, really, crime has been the big issue. Bernie Goetz, the famous subway shooter, he kind of represented that movement. And Trump was very much a part of that. So, the American carnage theme in his Republican convention speech, I think it was, written by Stephen Miller, portraying America as just awash in blood. The cities are burning. And this was before 2020, right? It's partly true. And it was certainly true in the summer of 2020. But it's not nearly as true as they're making it out to be. And I don't want to exaggerate this, although I have to say, given where I live, I live on the edge of East Oakland. I don't live in the bad part of East Oakland, but I live close enough to the bad part that I hear gunshots most nights, and I hear drag racing most nights. And my catalytic converter was stolen, and my landlord's truck was broken into, and I can go on. My friend Jason's van was stolen outright right up the street here. It's just, that's not normal. So I'm getting a sense, I'm not exactly sure how bad crime really is in America. I know that it's bad on the edge of East Oakland, but I think it's been bad like this for a long time. So it's hard to figure out what's going on, but I do think that we need to get to the bottom of it and stop playing politics with it.
Mm-hmm. What was San Francisco like during the George Floyd riots?
Well, it's actually interesting. I mean, they wild out here at any chance. I mean, any opportunity, they'll wild out and go crazy. But it was less violent than in other parts of the country, oddly. I don't know why. I mean, there were big demonstrations, and some people rioted, and Antifa was doing its thing. But I don't remember things getting burned. The last time things really burned around here was when Milo Yiannopoulos came to town, when he came to Berkeley, and they and they trashed UC Berkeley and set fire to the student union building there. But I don't recall. I mean, I lived here during the first Gulf War, and we went pretty crazy. We blocked the Bay Bridge. I was part of that. I blocked the Bay Bridge. Stupidest thing ever. We blocked all the streets in downtown San Francisco by sitting down, just thousands of us sitting down in the middle of the street. That kind of stuff. But yeah, it wasn't, I mean, it was sort of normal crazy here, but nothing extraordinary.
Mm-hmm. In Indianapolis, we had a curfew. And I think it was like 7 p.m. And there were all these demonstrations all day, mostly peaceful. But as soon as 7 p.m. hit, businesses were boarded up in anticipation. But as soon as 7 p.m. hit, the cops came out and they would arrest and beat your ass if you were still outside after 7 p.m.
In Bloomington?
No, not Bloomington, Indianapolis.
Indy? Yeah.
And I talked to my more liberal friends, and I was really against it personally because, civil rights guy or, individual rights guy, I don't like curfews. And I didn't like the pandemic measures. I thought it was just all authoritarianism. But even my more liberal friends were like, oh, this is so great. I'm so thankful that none of our businesses were destroyed. That they were like, I'm glad that this shit got shut down. And looking ahead to the midterms, I knew I carried all my valuables on a backpack when I went to San Francisco because I know that that's just what happens. And there was also human shit on the streets with the homelessness problem.
Yes.
And, I'm really tempted after spending a weekend in San Francisco to vote Republican to just bite the bullet and say, you know what? I care about my community and I don't want crime to happen and I don't want there to be shit on the streets.
Okay, I can't do that. Can't vote Republican. I haven't voted since 1984. I voted for Walter Mondale in 1984. That was the last time I voted for anybody. Not even proud of that, but I was all of 19 years old then. I can't vote because I can't give my name to someone who will then kill and incarcerate people, which they inevitably will do, Democrat or Republican. Certainly on the national level, certainly not for president. I just can't. I can't vote for someone who will be the head of the CIA and will do no good with it. I can't vote for governor of California, which has, I think, the largest prison population in the world, or one of them anyway, maybe second biggest after Texas, something like that. I can't vote for people who steal money in taxes from me and everyone else I know. And we have, I don't know if you noticed the streets here. If you come to the East Bay, it's like, it's not even potholes. I mean, streets are buckled. There's craters in the streets. You have to drive around giant craters everywhere. The freeways have massive ravines and divots. And it's when I go to Mexico, I love going to Mexico because the streets are better than they are here. So giving my taxes, and paying like $65 in a parking fine for like parking on the street during street cleaning on a street that doesn't need cleaning. It needs asphalt. It's just, I can't vote for people who do that. I can't vote for people who are part of that system, and Republicans are part of that system. And Republicans also have their own tendencies to abrogate free speech. It's not just banning pornography. They want to ban a lot of stuff now. They want to ban CRT, talk of CRT. By the way, half of CRT is pretty worthwhile, but they don't want to listen to any of it. They're pretty hysterical about all things regarding sex, not just the grooming stuff, but they don't like gays. It turns out they really are pretty homophobic. And I think part of the anti-abortion stuff, part of it is a Puritanism. I can't do it. I mean, yeah, it'd be nice to lower taxes and to have like less crime also, but adding more cops ultimately is not really the best thing. I mean, it's better than having, I guess, no cops right now, but the Republican alternative, the Republican answer. And by the way, here's the worst thing about the fucking Republicans who talk about crime all the time and talk about immigration all the time. like MAGA and Bannon and all these people and Trump, they don't want to legalize drugs. I mean, the criminalization of drugs is responsible for so much crime, so much crime. The gangs in this country who produce most of the violent crime, something like 80 to 90% of the homicides are committed by gang members in this country. Huge majority of homicides are committed by gang members. Those gangs don't exist with legalized drugs. They don't exist. They didn't exist until the war on drugs started in the 1960s. They were just little street gangs who got in fistfights every once in a while. They were play gangs. But when the drugs war started and they really started enforcing the drug laws in the 1960s, then prices for drugs went way up, street drugs, which gave those gangs the reason for being. And from the money they gained from those artificially inflated prices and drugs, they bought a whole bunch of guns. And then they started to hire more and more people and buy more and more guns. And then other gangs proliferated and started to compete with each other and shooting each other, and we're off to the races. If you legalize drugs, the FBI has estimated violent crime, get this, will decline by 50%. The FBI, about 10 years ago, estimated that roughly 50% of violent crimes are drug related. They are not people necessarily trying to buy drugs or using drugs. It's that people, when they have a drug habit, tend to commit crime, often like theft, to support the drug habit because the prices are artificially high because the drugs are illegal. And then, of course, when you're stealing things from people to support a drug habit, you often have to employ violence. So 50%, according to the FBI, of violent crime in this country is caused by drugs being illegal. So I got a really simple policy prescription, but MAGA, the Republicans, Donald Trump, Steve Bannon ain't hearing it. And therefore, I ain't voting for them.
Mm-hmm. And the Republican answer is more cops. The problem is, the funny thing is, when my shit got broken into, we went to the police department and there's nothing we can do for you. We don't want to get into a shootout over your lost shit. And that's kind of what they said. Which I can sympathize with, but that's also kind of your job, right? You're supposed to be the ones, But how about this? How about you disband the police department completely and give all their weapons and resources to the local shop owners? Because a local shop owner was our witness. It's really hard to get a gun in San Francisco, and this shit is happening in broad daylight, and just empower people to protect themselves.
Arm the Yemeni shop owners.
Yeah,
it's all Yemeni here in the last 5 to 10 years. All the corner stores and stuff have been owned by Yemenis, and they're awesome, and I love them. And they're badasses because they're from Yemen. So they know a few things about guns and violence. They could probably defend themselves pretty well. They could probably defend us pretty well. Yeah. Let's give AK-47s to every Yemeni shop owner in the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all for
Absolutely.
it. That'd be kind of amazing, actually.
Yeah.
Huh. Let's do that.
Yeah. I did some research too on fentanyl because we were talking about it earlier. Like, all the drug supply is potentially tainted with fentanyl. So a lot of people are more scared of experimenting with drugs.
Yeah.
I'm a little suspicious because, again, why would somebody kill their customers? Why are drug dealers putting a poisonous substance in their drugs? So I think a lot of it is exaggerated on the news for sensationalist purposes, to cover up for the just overdoses increasing in general because of lockdowns. I think that the lockdowns in general caused a sense of desperation. I can kind of speak from personal experience with some people that had nothing better to do, and they're like, fuck it, I'm unemployed, I'm gonna do some heroin like I used to. I think they're covering up for that a little bit in the news, but also I think the drug legalization movement really needs to say, when we said legalization, we mean legalization. And the truth of the matter is, substances like MDMA, for example, and these other drugs aren't addictive enough to get people hooked. And so the drug dealers are cutting it with an opioid to get their their customer base addicted to something that isn't otherwise addictive. So if this shit were legal, it wouldn't be cut with more harmful substances. It would be very transparent. You get what you pay for, like you do with everything else.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. I mean, it makes it safer too, right? It's, I mean, people might laugh at me for this, but I think it's actually a tragedy. The fentanyl, using fentanyl to cut all these drugs is tragic for many reasons. Number one is that people are dying, of course. But number two is that people are not, they're not experimenting with drugs. And I think it's actually good. I think it's good for a society to experiment with drugs. I think the 60s and all of the good things that came out of the 60s, and this is for people even on the right and the left, you know, see that many very good things happened in the 60s, not everything, but, you know, I think it's not coincidence that that corresponded with a rise in the use of especially psychedelic drugs. I think societies tend to advance in very interesting and positive ways when there is drug experimentation, not drug addiction, not just drug use, but experimentation. And I think you saw that a lot, you know, in the last 10 years until the lockdowns. You saw a lot of experimentation with drugs. You saw the psychedelic movement really taking off. Joe Rogan was really leading that for a while, and people were really getting into exploring what, you know, what ayahuasca does, what MDMA does, what all these, you know, what cannabis does. And there still are, but there were academic institutes established to study this. Matt Gaetz and AOC, of all people, actually co-sponsored a bill about 2 years ago to legalize the medical use of ecstasy, which is amazing. And that was because of this sort of psychedelic drug movement. You know, that's in danger because of fentanyl being used to cut all these drugs, right? I mean, I'm not going to buy a powder on the street right now. I'm just not, even though it's very easy for me to do that. I have plenty of connections, but no, I just won't do it.
You also live in a city with an open air drug market.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's Leighton Woodhouse's thing. Yeah, I mean, yes, it's there. I should have taken you on a tour of it when we were here, but it's, you know, it's a few blocks in the downtown San Francisco near South of Market. But that's for, you know, it's all homeless schizophrenic people. It's not like normal people go there and buy drugs. Never has been for that. So yeah, I mean, it's legalize drugs, goddammit. I'm just gonna say this every week until it happens. How about that?
Yeah. And the thing is also, with marijuana being partially legalized, it's legalized for certain corners that get tax benefits. You know, we mean full legalization of everything. You know, we don't mean any of this partialized regulated crap. We mean full legalization of everything. And that's one thing that's really bothered me about marijuana or decriminalization, I'll call it that, is that it's really satiated a lot of people's activism on this subject.
Yeah. I think I told you this. I don't believe what I'm about to say, but I'm just going to say it anyway. I went to the dispensary a couple weeks ago, and this was after I had gone to the grocery store. I spent $200 at the grocery store buying groceries just for myself, and I promised I didn't buy anything fancy. And then I went to the dispensary and I bought a bunch of weed, and I got a full gram cartridge of distillate, right? And it was $15. And that is about 300 or 400 hits right there. Weed is the only thing, or at least around here, that is cheap now. And boy, I walked out of that dispensary really excited about my cheap weed, but also thinking, man, this has to be a conspiracy. I don't think it is, but it feels like it must be, because we're all getting high now. You can smell weed wherever you go in big cities in America, certainly around here. And, you know, weed makes you very docile, takes away the anger that you might have, makes you not so rebellious, makes you much more accepting of what goes on around you. Weed is actually really good for the ruling class, the ruling elite, whoever it is, because it tends to make the population smile and laugh and giggle and eat snacks a lot. Alcohol, as you will know from reading A Renegade History of the United States, has very often led to social rebellion, unrest, uprisings, all the way back to the American Revolution. That was all run by drunks at the street level. Boston Massacre was a bunch of drunks fighting the British redcoats in the streets. I'm sober from alcohol for 10 years now. And because it's very bad for individuals and for me often, but socially, alcohol has led to a lot of good stuff, but especially it seems like it has led to political rebellions that have been very useful in certainly American history. Not so much weed. Weed is a wonderful drug. I love the fact that it cuts my anger. I don't have rage anymore the way I used to. But I think it's not good if you want political change, if you want to see social movements arise and be successful. Marijuana is not the best drug. And so it's, if there isn't a conspiracy to push marijuana on us through low prices, and I don't think there is, but if there isn't a conspiracy, the ruling elite in this state, in this city, should have a conspiracy. Mm-hmm. And it's very odd that weed is the only thing that's cheap now. The only thing that's cheap.
Yeah, the dissident right has mentioned that a little bit, that it is a conspiracy potentially. Yeah, especially during the lockdowns when that first happened, when they realized, wait a minute, every single business is closed except for the dispensaries. Why are the dispensaries essential? And then also, why is Pornhub giving away a free month?
Oh, I missed that. They did?
Damn. Yeah, they did.
Can I get that retroactively? I wasn't aware of that. All right, what's next?
Oh, well, I want to wrap up the Pelosi shit. What do you think?
Yeah.
MSNBC, which is the January 6th network, was drawing all the connections to January 6th, saying, oh, here's a crazy person who believed online conspiracy theories, breaking into some place and yelling, where's Nancy Pelosi? Where's Nancy Pelosi?
Okay. I know, because we went there, I could not break into Paul Pelosi's house. Okay. I don't think Mr. DePop was capable of breaking into Paul Pelosi's mansion in Pacific Heights with all the security. Yes.
This is the parallel to J6. They were let in.
Yes, they were let in. He was let in. By whom we don't know. So there was this third person that it was initially, I love Politico, the day after they reported that there was a third unnamed person in the house. And then like a day or two later, they said, that's a myth. It's been debunked that there was a third person in the house. Okay, but Politico reported that and the police reported it too. There's just so many things. You can't get into that house. You can't get into that house, especially if you're a naked, crazy guy from Berkeley. Paul Pelosi was in a DUI, as everyone knows, not long ago, just a few months ago, here in Napa Valley. He was driving home to San Francisco from Napa Valley. And I have seen reports, but I haven't confirmed this, that there was a passenger in that car, in his car. I don't know if I have not seen verification for that. The word is that the Democratic Party just squelched that, like made the highway patrol not announce that. But I think there's been enough evidence around the edges to suggest that there was a passenger in his car. Then who was that? Is Paul Pelosi gay? I have zero idea. I mean, he is from San Francisco, which raises the chances slightly. But, there's plenty of us from the Bay Area who are not gay. So I don't know. If I were married to Nancy Pelosi, who I do think is quite attractive, I might still be gay because of who she is otherwise. But there's just too many unanswered questions. There's too many things that make no sense about this. Why did the cops witness the hammer blow? Why did they not take the hammer from the guy when they got there? Yeah. And then the politics of it. Of course, I mean, the Democrats using this guy's deranged rants, and I guess they made up this website that he didn't actually write for or something. Because the timing was all weird. It was like the website was established like the day before the attack, and the posts on it were like dated some other time entirely. It was clearly manufactured by somebody. Why did that happen? Why did someone create this website that this guy allegedly wrote things on that were right wing? The use of this by the Democrats to advance their agenda is why why we need to talk about this. If it were just an attack on Paul Pelosi, I would say that's terrible, because Paul Pelosi is not a government official. I don't have any beef with him whatsoever, just his wife. But the Democrats have been using it to say that it's, this is the result of right-wing propaganda. MAGA talking points has made, put a target on the heads of people like Paul Pelosi. No, I don't think so. I think it was something personal. I think it had something to do with Paul Pelosi's personal life. And, you know, I mean, he's married to Nancy Pelosi. First of all, she's Nancy Pelosi. Second of all, she's in Washington, D.C. all the time. So the guy's going to play in some way or another. And I have a feeling it was him playing around that got him into trouble here.
Mm-hmm. So the problem is, as you hear on all these mainstream networks, is conspiracy theorizing and conspiracy theories. And we've talked about this before, but in this instance and in general, like what you were just doing is conspiracy theorizing, right?
Yeah.
It's just the process of thinking, right? You're just not allowed these days to draw your own conclusions, to connect the own dots based off what you've seen with your own two eyes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the conspiracy theory thing, until about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, something like that, I dismissed almost all of them out of hand. Conspiracy theories. When I heard that someone was a conspiracy theorist, I looked down on them, lost respect for them, wouldn't listen to them, didn't take them seriously. It was a real mark against you in my eyes if you were a conspiracy theorist. Those days are over. Now I listen to conspiracy theorists all day, every day, and I find that they are usually right. When we taught our history of the CIA at the Unregistered Academy, it just really hit me over the head. It's like, dude, you knew this stuff. You knew that the CIA was doing absolutely bonkers stuff in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and still is, but so why on earth would you not believe in conspiracy theories? If you just look at the list of the covert operations of the CIA in the 1950s and 60s, you'll believe any conspiracy theory, or at least you'll take any conspiracy theory seriously. The federal government, the intelligence agencies in particular, has done unbelievable stuff that's been secret. It's been conspiracies forever, for a very long time. And so the government is capable of just about anything. And so we should take seriously almost any conspiracy theory that's coherent. Mm-hmm. Alex Jones is right most of the time. I mean, and when I say most, I mean more than 90%. When I've listened to Alex Jones, he's right at least 90% of the time. And so, yeah, I think one thing we're all finding out, those of us who have been serious about politics, what we've been finding out over the last 5 to 10 years, the previously blue-pilled among us, is that, yeah, there have been a lot of conspiracies. And we're going to find out, by the way, a whole lot more starting in January, assuming the Republicans win these elections coming up, and assuming the Republicans take the House, and if they take the Senate too, my goodness. But I think I am very, very much looking forward to congressional hearings, to Congress. I've never looked forward to a Congress like this one. Beginning in January, we're going to find out some great stuff, man. It's going to be awesome.
Here's why I ask that. Do you feel any sense of responsibility for what you say on your platforms? Like, do you feel worried ever that somebody might hear a fragment of what you say and you get something wrong, like we all do, and we're openly speculating about stuff, but somebody takes what you say and does something bad with that information?
That's really tough one for a postmodernist, right? Because postmodernists say that language is everything and everything is language. That's where these wokesters got this silence is violence thing, right? They have a point. I mean, what feels worse to you? Like psychological attacks that you've experienced in your life or physical attacks? What feels worse to you? Like shame and guilt and anger and hatred, all those things, that you felt from other people, or getting hit in the face? I mean, to me, there's no question about it. It's the psychological attacks are far more damaging to me and far worse. Having said that, though, we can still draw lines. What I don't want is law. I don't want law that is based on such things as psychological violence. I don't want a law protecting anyone from psychological violence, because if you do that, the law becomes so capacious, it covers just about anything, and almost anything can be punished, right? What I'm saying right now could be construed by someone as being violence, because I am not talking about racism. And if you're not talking about racism, that's violence. And therefore, if I'm being violent, then I should go to prison. It's a very quick and easy slippery slope if you want law to be based on that standard, right? When someone feels psychological hurt, someone else should be punished for it? No. So it's good to have law, I think, just based on physical violence, to respond to just physical violence, because that's tangible, it's measurable, it's relatively objective. It's, you know, we can have real arguments about what is and what's not physical violence, whereas we can't with psychological violence. So that's my kind of half wishy-washy answer, you know, being a postmodernist, but not wanting to go down that route of punishing people for being silent or punishing people for saying words that hurt the feelings of others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sentiment should also extend to hate crime laws, in that, like,
oh yeah,
why do certain motivations make something worse?
I've never understood hate crime laws. I mean, it's clearly just virtue signaling. I mean, murder, like, the penalties for murder are good enough for me. I mean, if someone kills someone I care about, the penalty is good enough for me. It's either, you know, life in prison or death or decades in prison. Why do we need to add more to it? I've never understood that.
Yeah, it's still the state enforcing thought. Certain thoughts are bad and should intensify your crime.
But let me finish answering your question about, like, whether I worry about my words causing someone to take some kind of action that I don't like. You know, I'm not the kind of person, I'm not the kind of public intellectual who goes around. I'm not an organizer. I'm not really an activist. You know, people on the left, people on the MAGA right, you know, every time they do a podcast, it's like all in the service of organizing, activism, getting people moving, getting them to do particular things, taking positions on particular policies. That's not what I'm about. So that's good. But yeah, sure. I mean, I've had fans of my show that have been totally crazy, who I think could have been capable of doing all kinds of stuff. I think everybody who has a show has fans like that. And I do worry about it. I worry about it all the time, in fact. But that's, you know, this is why we shouldn't have laws based on words. We shouldn't have laws that protect people from words. We should have laws that protect people from only from physical violence. So, because I want to be free to speak. And I think all public intellectuals, all public figures should be free to speak. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's the cost of freedom. Just, it's a cliche, sorry, but that's just true.
Yeah. And what the mainstream narrative people are doing is conspiracy theorizing as well. Like, the idea that David DePape is radicalized by Donald Trump is a complete conspiracy theory with very little evidence. Like,
None.
Yeah.
None. Right. I mean, the dude lived in a school bus in Berkeley. I know. By the way, he lived on the street I grew up on when I was a little kid here, Woolsey Street. Not the same neighborhood, but like a few blocks down. So I know it really well. And trust me, there was no Republican was living on that street in that school bus in that house with a BLM sign and a rainbow flag.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I've got another great broadcast segue to go to Elon with this clip. Perfect. So here's where the platform really matters about free speech and all that.
Overshadowing the fact that Elon Musk's deal to buy Twitter is one of the biggest in tech history, even overshadowing how many Twitter employees Musk might lay off, is a tweet by the new boss that ripped through his company.
It basically shows that he doesn't seem to understand his leadership role at the company right now.
Musk tweeted, then later deleted this, a link to a site with very little credibility claiming, without evidence, that Paul Pelosi was drunk and somehow knew his attacker. There were no sources to the claims, but they, thanks largely to Musk's audience, ricocheted across the internet. A violation, according to Irina Raiku of the Markkula Center for Ethics, of both facts and ethics.
In the context where somebody just got severely injured, and musing about the motivations of the attacker shows, if nothing else, a complete and utter lack of empathy.
Some say for a site known as a source for news and information, the behavior of its new owner is a step down.
There's definitely a threat to the responsible dissemination of information.
Okay, Scott, let's go ahead and talk about the money factor now, right? Because Elon Musk did admit he overpaid for Twitter. So how does he expect to get that money back?
You know, that was a big issue last week, and it's sort of coming over into this week, Audrey. For one thing, he said if you want that blue check mark of verification, you're likely to be charged $20 a month for it. That's at least one way to generate some revenue. But let's face it, the biggest cash cow for Twitter, advertisers. On Friday, we saw General Motors pull out because it was worried about the content. Sure. That was even before the Paul Pelosi misinformation tweet. Now Elon Musk is going to have to deal, I imagine, with other advertisers who are worried about this kind of thing being spread on the site.
All right.
The responsible dissemination of information. Mm-hmm. I'm dying to know what that means. What she means by that.
Yeah. Good. I looked at that link and I'm like, SMA observed. What the hell is this? Like, that sounds like a horrible, horrible website. No credibility at all. It's the Santa Monica Observer. Yeah. And it's just a local paper that followed in the initial story the initial police reports of what happened that were very, very vague and raised a lot of legitimate questions that we just went over. It's not like some conspiracy theory website with no credibility. And since then, they have raised a full retraction at the same link, basically saying that new information has come out, that authorities, quote, have changed their story of the Friday morning break-in at the Pelosi's home several times, making it more difficult to understand the strange and heinous crime. Very, very responsible reporting by the Santa Monica Observer on this.
Yeah, and I think, did they report that DePop was arrested more than once for sex work? I think they were. I think they reported that. You know, which seems relevant to me, even though I want sex work legalized too, and I don't want to stigmatize sex workers. I still think it's relevant if we're going to get to the bottom of this. If we're going to find out if it was right-wing politics that caused Paul Pelosi to get hit in the head with a hammer, or it was something else. Yeah.
So the responsible dissemination of information.
Yeah, so Twitter, when it started, I remember when I joined it, which was 2008, I think it was. Been on for a long time now. And for many years after that, I just assumed that Twitter was just going to be like this unmediated, unregulated, playground, like schoolyard,
And it was for a while.
Yeah, right. And it should be. That's what social media, I assume, when social media started in the late 2000s and 2010s, I really did. I thought that everybody agreed with me that that's what they would be. They would be basically just free range sites where you could just say whatever you wanted and be social media. That's to me the point. It's not a publication. It's not a unitary publication, with a name on it, like Unregistered. It's not, or the New York Times, where there's like an editorial policy, right, that organizes what information is being disseminated through there. This is a social media. It's a new form of media. It's a brand new form of media in which I thought the premise was that anybody can talk and that there was no particular editorial line. But they're saying there should be a particular editorial line at social media companies. And I don't get it. The one thing I would like to see, though, I got to say this, having suffered quite a bit from anonymous users on Twitter, I would like to see someone establish a social media platform for anonymous users where you can be anonymous, but I'd like Twitter to get rid of that. I think I'm tired of it. I think I'm tired of anonymous users, and I still think the speech will be just as free in a sense, but I do think that a real accountability will come into play when you can't be anonymous, because people can get punched in the face.
Yeah. I know what you're saying. The problem is Twitter is kind of like such a drug that I don't know. They can't do it. They might do it, but like Twitter is potentially 80% bots also.
Yeah.
So like if you get rid of anonymity, you get rid of pretty much a potential majority of their users. And then the house of cards collapses on that, which might be a good thing. Yeah.
That sounds like a good thing to me.
Also, yeah, I remember when I rejoined Twitter and I started following political content and just retweeting stuff and getting more and more extreme. And I'm like, shit, I should really not use my name for this. And I went anonymous and I had fun with it. And I would not stand behind anything that my social media assistant does on my accounts. But it's anonymous. And that's the point of it, is that you can say shit. And I know you're a public figure, but you can say shit to public figures to get them riled up. And that's the whole game, is to take somebody down from their high horse and bring them down to the human level and throw tomatoes at them.
Well, I'm fine with that. Just I want to know what your name is.
Yeah.
And I want to know where you live too. No, I don't need to know where you live, but I do need to know where your name is, because I'm going to invite you, not you, but there's hundreds of people out there I would like to invite to meet me someday. There's a lot of people I'd love to meet in person, and I've invited many of them to meet with me, but they've never taken me up on it. So I can't do that. I can't follow up on that if I don't know their names. And if their avatar is some anime girl, I just can't find them.
Yeah. The whole thing about social media being taken more and more seriously, I think, is also the fault of the old guard of Twitter, in that I think to cater to a sense of legitimacy, because it is the best platform to follow news. It really is, because everything comes out in text form immediately. You learn about everything first on Twitter if you're really following it. Journalists got lazy and started using tweets as news stories. And instead of doing actual hard research, they just put a bunch of tweets and a couple paragraphs reiterating those tweets and said, oh, that's a news story, instead of doing any hard work. And then in return, this gave Twitter a sense of legitimacy. Then they gave the journalists a sense of legitimacy back by giving them easy access to blue check marks. Like, the verification thing is a privileged class, which Elon Musk is doing away with, which is awesome. He's making them completely egalitarian. For the price of a latte, you can be verified, which is great. It gets rid of the privileged class of journalists. Like, there's a lot of big celebrities with a ton of following, a lot of YouTube content creators and stuff like that aren't seen as legitimate, but there's a lot of journalists with 1,000 followers who are verified, and that turned Twitter into what it is today.
It seems like the person who was most upset about this new rule about blue checks is AOC. She's tweeted about it a few times. She did a whole video about it. She's very upset about it, and I find that to be outrageously hypocritical on her part. It's completely egalitarian to charge money for the privileged service. Duh. Like, that's actually more democratic and egalitarian than what we have now, where it's completely arbitrary as to who gets the blue check. And it's political. It's not arbitrary. It's actually predetermined who gets them and who doesn't, right? And AOC should know that she is establishment. She is conservative. She is what she rails against. I mean, if you have a blue check, you are establishment. I mean, the only person I know who has a blue check who I wouldn't consider establishment is Michael Malice, and maybe Hotep Jesus. I think those are the only two people I know. I think they're the only two I know of who have blue checks who I don't consider establishment. So yeah, let's do that. And also, now going forward, we'll know that you paid for that blue check mark, so it's way less impressive. I mean, basically, it's just like taking all the power out of the blue checks by doing that. I think it's brilliant. All for it. Are you optimistic about Elon Musk?
A little bit, in that what I see his strategy doing, for example, with the $8 blue check verification, and there's a $5 thing where you get like an edit button and you get some other features that people have been clamoring for, is that he is actually going to run Twitter like a business that serves its customer base. And that's how it tries to make its money, by making the experience better for its users, as opposed to catering to a bunch of outside interests to make it serious and legitimate.
Okay. But do you think he's really going to allow speech?
I'm not sure if it's possible. I'm not sure if anybody takes over Twitter that they're going to allow it. There's too much liability, and there's too many people out there fighting against that have too much power to make that happen. That's where I'm leaning. I'm afraid it's looking a little, and I used to not think this, but I do now. Word is that when a sort of
president who's made noises against wars enters the office. On the first day, the Joint Chiefs take him down to the Situation Room, and they lay out all these maps and documents and show him, all the threats, all the dangers in the world, and convince him very quickly that he must be just as aggressive and belligerent and imperialist as the last guy was. And that's why we've had, that's why Barack Obama, who talked stuff about the Iraq war, just went ahead and continued everything that Bush was doing, etc. There's been, even Trump, right, who talked the most shit about American foreign policy. There wasn't much of a break. And in fact, we now have a bigger military than we did when he took office. I have a feeling that that's what happens with Twitter, that once you become the CEO, their lawyers probably, and maybe their lobbyists too, sit you down in some secret room in the headquarters over there in San Francisco and tell you, no, we can't allow people to say certain things about the C word. We can't allow certain people to can't allow people to say certain things about the U word. That thing that's happening in Europe. Yeah, I would imagine for legal reasons, for political reasons. But the big one is this. In 1934, Hollywood instituted the Motion Picture Production Code, the code, right? Which was this really ridiculous puritanical censorship code on movies that from 1934 to 1965 produced this particular kind of movie in which sex wasn't talked about, which violence wasn't seen, all sorts of things were not allowed. Disrespecting authority, disrespecting cops wasn't allowed, by the way, in Hollywood movies in the 40s, 50s, and 60s because of that. They did that. Hollywood did that to itself, but they did it because the Franklin Roosevelt administration was letting them know very clearly, this is 1934, Roosevelt's been in office for a year, very clearly that if they didn't do it, if Hollywood didn't censor themselves, the federal government would do it for them. And that's clearly was the intention behind all those congressional hearings a few years ago when they brought Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey to Capitol Hill and dressed them down before all the senators on national TV. They were being told in so many words that if they don't censor us, the federal government will censor them. And that's really what's going on. And I think that's why Elon Musk will end up being a big disappointment.
This is why I don't have hope for Republicans either, is that the Republican response to that was, instead of censoring you, we'll nationalize your ass. We'll take you completely over. We'll go completely socialist on you. And boom. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, that's Steve Bannon's position on Twitter. It should be a public utility. What? Controlled by the U.S. government? Really?
Yeah.
That's going to be better. Right. And talk about socialism. Who's the socialist? Jackson Hinkle has he's trying to start this movement called MAGA communism. That would be MAGA communism right there. Nationalizing all the communication infrastructure under a MAGA government.
Yeah. And when the federal government nationalizes the modes of communication, they do it so there's less censorship and that there's less content moderation, right? That's what always happens is when.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, actually, yes, in a way, in that, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s and 80s, when there were 3 TV networks and PBS, and that was it. I mean, there were many fewer acts of specific censorship because, 90% of discourse was already censored. Most things were not allowed to be spoken on television or on the radio or in newspapers. So they didn't have to censor much. I mean, the discourse was like this narrow, until the late 1980s when Rupert Murdoch challenged them and won with the FCC. And by the way, people don't know that. Like, Rupert Murdoch is the hero of free speech in this country. In the 1980s, he challenged the monopoly of the networks with the FCC, and he ended up winning. And that's why he started Fox and Fox News, and then he broke it all open. And the next thing you know, you had Jon Stewart and all the rest of it, and then podcasting and us. And so Rupert Murdoch did that. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, we can't go back to that. It's not going to happen because of technology. There are just too many ways to speak, to be heard, to publish now, to broadcast now. There will always be ways to go around the censors, even in China. I mean, people get around the censors all the time because of technology, because of wonderful technology. But so I just think it's going to be it will always be a fight. I mean, does anyone think that there will be a time when we're all just happy and there's free speech reigns and everybody's cool with it? There's no fight over that? No, of course not. There's always been a fight over speech in this country. When did it start? It started with the American goddamn Revolution. and the Alien and Sedition Acts. I mean, the founding fathers weren't fans of free speech either. You know, they've been attacking free speech since the country existed, since the country was born. It's just, you know, let's all get comfortable with that fight. Let's get comfortable with that conflict, and let's decide what side we're on.
Yeah. I was listening to Brian McClanahan again. He's my guy.
Awesome.
And,
awesome episode. Love that episode. Love Brian. That was so fun.
His show, he has such a sophisticated and historically informed view on things that is so unique.
Yep.
What he was saying recently about human rights was that the English common law tradition of rights is much less imperialistic than the American view of human rights, in that the rights are not some universalist thing that everybody is automatically entitled to by birth. It's something that citizens are entitled to because it's something that their government has conquered for them, and that it's a service that their government owes them. And I think, yeah, that's just such a smarter way about dealing with human rights that has been completely lost in America. I think a lot of the failings of the libertarian movement is based off of a flawed belief in human rights.
That's really interesting. That connects with some of the stuff I've been saying about the Declaration of Independence and sort of American political discourse generally, which, you know, it's a propositional country. We were founded on an idea, on a proposition that all men are created equal, rather than blood and soil, or rather than conquest, or rather than some particular political moment. You know, this country was founded on that idea. But, you know, within the Declaration of Independence, it also says, where there is a dictator, you are obligated to rise up and overthrow him. It is your duty, is the word in the Declaration. So this universalistic, basically, it's a secular Christian universalistic idea that all people in the world should have the rights that we have in our Constitution. That has been the justification, the pretext for every single solitary military intervention by the United States in the world since the American Revolution. And it started with Jefferson, as a matter of fact, sending the Marines, which he created, to Tripoli to fight the Barbary Coast pirates back in the 1800s. That was the official rationale. And it has been the rationale for, as I said, for the Civil War, for the Spanish-American War, World War I, World War II, et cetera, et cetera. It's caused all sorts of mayhem around the world and has done not a lot of good for anybody, really, I would say. And that's very interesting. Yeah, the United States is exceptional, is unique in that way, in that the United States has always claimed to be the universal country, the global country, humanity's country, right? We're not just for Americans. America has never been just for Americans. America has always been for the world. It has always been intended to save and uplift the world. And I'm speaking as an American leader, right, over the last 200 years. And that's where we are different, because we were established on a universalistic idea that all people should have the rights that Americans have. Go to any other country, they don't talk that way. They say, we have our rights, we have our customs, we have our traditions, we have our privileges and benefits from being a citizen of this country, but, you know, we don't believe it belongs to other people. We're certainly not going to go out and enforce that in other countries. We're not going to go and topple governments elsewhere to ensure that people across the world have our rights. It's very interesting being an American. It's unique. No other country's ever done this. Not even Rome, not even Imperial Rome. Caesar talked a little bit about that, but it was never universalistic. He never talked about all human beings, you know, having certain rights. Natural law, natural rights, that whole concept, which the Americans got from John Locke, ended up causing lots of war, lots of destruction, lots of death.
With the most hate we're getting right now online has to do with the Trita Parsi episode that we did a while back.
Yeah,
and, it's super weird. I think they're bots, but there is a large right-wing push to invade Iran, and there's a large, I guess, neoliberal push as well that we need to make this push for women's rights in Iran. And it seems that a lot of people have just forgotten how we got here with these interventions.
Yeah, that was bizarre. I didn't quite understand that. Trita had said something about just I think he just said that the rebellions in Iran over the last several years have been essentially organic, that they have not been directed by the CIA. He didn't discount the possibility that the CIA has been involved in the opposition in Iran, nor have I. But I mean, I've been saying, just like him, that it sure looks like it's real and authentic and ground up in grassroots.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you're right. I think a lot of sort of right-wing hawks on Iran, and there is this sort of subsection of kind of neocons and MAGA both, you know, the Trumpers and Bannon and company. Frank Gaffney is their foreign policy guru, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Frank Gaffney's wanted to invade Iran since he was born. I mean, he's been every minute he's calling for new invasion of Iran. Let's bomb Iran. They have had a hard on for Iran since the get-go. Mad Dog Mattis, all the military guys, all the generals that Trump brought into his cabinet early on, what united all of them, I think every single one of them had lost a man or more or men to Iranian terror, that Hezbollah and other Iranian-backed factions, terrorist organizations, had killed men who served under them. And so every one of them, leading with Mattis, wanted to go hard on Iran, really hard on Iran. And that's why they took out Soleimani, by the way. That's why they took out Soleimani, which was, you know, by the way, in the developing world, Soleimani was very much a hero for a lot of people. But so yeah, I mean, I think that's why they were upset with Trita Parsi for just saying that these rebellions are, you know, genuine. It still doesn't make any sense to me. But
yeah, they're trying to.
I think. Well, sorry.
And
the argument that Trita was making. Sorry, the argument that Trita was making, I think, was that this is what it was. That the Iranian people do not need the help of the United States. They do not need American intervention to overthrow that regime. And he's completely right about that.
Yeah. Like what we've been saying, I guess, is that if you really want to help these people out, leave them alone. And if possible, engage in free trade.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
and
it.
even if we see every government as a criminal organization, right? But if you engage in free trade and the government gets richer, that money will trickle down to the people in some way. Like there's just more money around. And once free trade gets more people rich, like we've seen this in China, they tend to adopt more humanitarian policies than what was there before. And it's better than the alternative of like North Korea, which is completely isolated, or a revolution in Iraq or Libya, like we've seen.
Mm-hmm. I've said this before, but I haven't said it in a while. I invite everyone listening and watching to right now, or when you can, go Google Tehran. You could Google Tehran apartment building and satellite dishes, or just Tehran and satellite dishes. And you will see picture after picture of these huge block apartment buildings in Tehran, the capital of Iran, just studded with hundreds of satellite dishes, like coming out of every nook and cranny and crevice of an apartment building. Everybody has at least one satellite dish. The rooftops will be covered in satellite dishes. And by the way, satellite dishes in Iran are still illegal. They're illegal. And every once in a while, the morality police come along and they tear down all the satellite dishes in some apartment building. And then a day later, they pop right back up. People are watching TV, man. They're watching TV and they're watching the wrong kind of TV. They're watching Western TV. They're streaming in, and they're also streaming in the internet, and they're watching things on the internet they're not supposed to watch and not supposed to listen to. And then they are emulating people in the West that they're not supposed to emulate. And then the Iranian mullahs issue fatwas saying that you're not allowed to watch Britney Spears or Kim Kardashian. You're not allowed to wear t-shirts or to get your nose pierced. But it doesn't work. People in Iran are getting more and more Western every day, and they are celebrating the freedoms and pleasures they're finding in Western culture, and they are moving every day farther and farther away from Islam and Sharia, and it's just inevitable. What does cause them to rally around the government is U.S. and Western intervention, like the sanctions, which have killed thousands of Iranians who have not been able to get cancer treatment and HIV treatment because of them. So when you slap sanctions on a country, the people in it are not going to like you very much. So that is simply retarding the progress of revolution in Iran. What, as you said it perfectly, the best thing to do to help the revolution go forward is to leave them alone, maybe build some more satellite dishes, but just leave them alone and keep doing what you're doing as Americans. Keep making TV shows and weird websites and, you know, setting new trends and fashion. And that's really what takes down Islamism more than anything.
Yeah. Oh man, it's crazy. I'm just thinking now that you mentioned that, when Osama bin Laden was captured and murdered, they found porn at his place. They just found stacks of porn at his place. Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
That's the Americanization right there. Yeah.
Exactly. And all the 9/11 guys, they used to hang out in nightclubs and
Strip clubs.
I mean, they were all hedonists,
Mhm.
you know, and they learned that stuff from the West.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Just let it go. Just let it go. Just let those people do what they want to do. And it overwhelmingly in every country that I've studied, they move in this direction. They move in that direction. They move toward hedonism and away from social discipline and away from authoritarianism. And it's the best thing ever. Kim Kardashian doesn't even know how powerful she is in liberating the world. The people the people she's gotten out of prison in the United States is wonderful. God bless her. I love her for that. But that's nothing compared to how she's liberated people in Iran and Saudi Arabia and the Philippines. I mean, all over the world. People have watched her videos and watched her show and said, I want to be more like her, which is in direct violation of Islamic law. And so that's why you have all those women in the streets of Tehran throwing off their hijabs and spitting in the face of the morality police, because they've seen women on TV and on the internet who don't act like you're supposed to act, and they think it's great, and that's it. That's the end of it. And it's almost always starts with women too.
Yeah.
Control of women is always crucial in any civilization. So when you lose control of women in that way, you're done. Just let them go.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm a little angry about that Kim Kardashian thing, because Kanye West did the real groundwork on that. Kanye West is the person who talked to Trump and really got the First Step Act through. I'm just thinking back to now, you don't see that much activism from Kim, I think, on now that Biden's in office. You don't see her being so vocal about types of people.
Well, I think that's because the Democrats froze them out, right? Democrats don't talk to them.
Well, they definitely still talk to the Kardashians. You know,
do they?
Kanye West is frozen out. He's been divorced too, so they definitely talk. I think Kim was on Hillary's show, the Strong Women show. Yeah. I'd be surprised if he wasn't on that show, but yeah.
Even though what's her face Caitlyn Jenner was running as a Republican.
Yeah, I think even still, I think Caitlyn Jenner's a kind of odd man out.
What? You misgendered badly.
Right. Yeah, old expression. Okay.
The good thing about Caitlyn is she's not offended by that.
She isn't. No, she's awesome.
She's cool.
Yeah, she's
in that way.
Really cool.
When she's not killing people on the freeway, she's cool. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we have to talk about the art thing happening. The Just Stop Oil people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Love them. Love those people.
Yeah, you do? Okay, just why?
No.
No.
The worst people on earth.
They are the worst people on earth. Have you followed the money with them?
No, tell me.
Okay, so Just Stop Oil people vandalizing paintings. They've been on TV shows interrupting them and putting super glue on their hands and super gluing themselves to places. They've been blocking traffic. All right, they get most of their money from the CEF, Climate Effect Foundation, something like that. And they get a lot of millionaire money.
Soros?
Getty.
Oh, my boy, Gordon Getty?
Granddaughter.
Hell yeah. The Gettys who created Gavin Newsom.
Yep.
That's fabulous. So that is the ultimate expression of white guilt, because the Getty money comes from where? Mm-hmm. Getty Oil. One of the biggest oil companies. One of the biggest oil companies of the 20th century. All of Gavin Newsom's entire career was paid for by Getty money. Gordon Getty out here in San Francisco. They're the wealthiest family in the Bay Area. And I think maybe in the state, but certainly in the Bay Area. They've kind of run everything here for my whole lifetime. Yeah, that's awesome. Gordon Getty is an absolute bonehead who loves to drink wine and fund political candidates who he finds who make him feel good. And so, yeah, I don't know how do you want to come at this? I mean, they're the worst people on earth. I have nothing but contempt for it, for the movement, for the people who are a part of it. Environmentalism, I have been suspicious of since I was an environmentalist back in college. There is a deep misanthropy inside the environmentalist movement that's been there since the beginning, since the 1960s when it was created. They don't like human beings. They just don't. They think human beings are the problem. They think we are a virus. They have called us that. Human beings have called us a virus. We are, in fact, it's true. We are responsible for every bit of environmental destruction in the world. That's right. Every time I take a step, I kill something. That's right. If I walk on grass, I kill grass. I killed a fly just 10 minutes ago, and I'm going to kill as many as I can today. But, I'm okay with that because I much prefer human beings over animals in every other way. For reasons that I feel like I shouldn't have to list, but I guess for environmentalists, I do have to list them. I enjoy being a human being. I like what it means to be a human being. I like the ways in which we are different than animals. And one of the ways we're different is that we destroy the environment. We do. We kill more animals to eat than other animals do. We do all sorts of bad things for the environment, but you got to make a decision. That's inevitable. Any human beings, no matter what they do, are going to hurt the environment just by existing, by living. So you got to make a decision. Are you with human beings who do that? It's a package deal. You get all the good things with human beings, but you also get their environmental destruction. Or you become a member of Greenpeace and you seek to destroy human life by, for instance, stopping all fossil fuels immediately. I mean, that they are talking about stopping fossil fuels. I think it's stop oil now. They're calling for 20 years, 10 years? Yeah. How long? When do they want us to stop using all fossil fuels? 10 years? 20 years?
Immediately. I don't know.
Tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow. There's
one girl had
it's almost 1,028 days left, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, this audience will know, but if we do that, we die. I mean, the hospitals close down. There is no food being delivered. There's no food being grown. That's just the beginning. I mean, there's no electricity. What happens when we have no electricity? You think that's going to be fun in the winter? Mm-hmm. You think that's going to be fun in the summer? I mean, we will die. We cannot sustain life as we know it on Earth. There will be a fraction of the population of the Earth's population, which is exactly what they want. That's what they want. That's what they know that. They're shooting for that. They want there to be a tiny percentage of the population left.
Yeah.
So they want a skeleton crew on Earth, so to speak.
These are rebels with billionaire funding, and the Climate Emergency Fund, Hollywood directors have contributed to it. Politicians have contributed to it. Billionaire, I guess Allison Getty's the granddaughter, but still, there's billionaire money behind it. Yeah. This leads us to Ted Kaczynski's analysis of I guess, rebels and radicals. In the system's neatest trick, he says, for the sake of its own efficiency and security, the system needs to bring about deep and radical social changes to match the conditions resulting from technological progress. Then the frustration of life under circumstances imposed by the system lead to rebellious impulses. Rebellious impulses are then co-opted by the system in service of social changes it requires. Activists rebel against the old and outmoded values that no longer serve the system and favor the new values that the system needs us to accept. In this way, rebellious impulses, which otherwise might have been dangerous to the system, are given an outlet that is not only harmless to the system, but useful to it. It seems like every politician basically wants the same direction and outlook and ending, the same objectives as these Just Stop Oil people, but these Just Stop Oil people make these politicians look like moderates by comparison and actually serve their use.
Yeah, they don't like human beings, but they do like government, because every single prescription they have is for government action, state action. They want governments to control the economy. They want the governments to reshape the economy, to revolutionize the economies in every part of the world. They want massive government intervention into really every part of our lives because they want to make sure that I am turning off the water when I'm brushing my teeth. I mean, how are you going to do that unless there's like a camera in here or somebody coming to check or something? They have to have surveillance of us. They have to make sure that I'm putting my LaCroix can in the proper recycling bin. Someone's got to like watch me do that. There's got to be a way to surveil me. So not to mention, like shutting down all the oil companies and then, establishing wind farms and solar farms on every spare piece of land across. And by the way, covering the earth in glass and steel doesn't seem terribly environmentalist to me. In fact, it seems quite dystopian. Mm-hmm. If you've ever come across, we have quite a few wind farms in California. Whenever you come across one of those or like an entire like huge field of solar panels, it's just, I don't feel terribly green when I see that. I don't feel like at one with nature. I don't feel like the earth is smiling at me when I see that, I feel like the earth is suffocating, in fact. It's all government intervention, all that massive government intervention. So that sounds establishment to me. That sounds fairly conservative. It sounds like the power that Ted Kaczynski was talking about. They end up serving the power. They get co-opted by power, by the state, and they enact things that just empower the state even further, which is empowering those who are already in power. How radical and rebellious are we? Stop oil now? I think not so much. I think I think they serve the man, as a matter of fact.
They absolutely do, and they're funded by the man. And that analysis of wind farms, that's very colonizing all the land. Somebody should write a paper about that. Yeah.
I've never understood why that's their preferred way to go. Like, why do they want that? It's so sick. Mm-hmm. And still, I ask, name one person who has died from climate change.
Yeah.
Name one. Name one person who has been displaced by climate change. Tell me one piece of property that has been shut down by rising sea levels. Show me. Show me a house that's underwater. Show me a house that's flooded because of it. They can't.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't exist. And oh, by the way, here's the best part. They talk about how people are dying. Greta Thunberg every goddamn day. People are dying from climate. The number of deaths from weather related from the environment have just plummeted over the last 100 years. I mean, people used to die from tornadoes and hurricanes and floods on a regular basis. Now almost no one does. Mm-hmm. I mean, what are we talking about? It's like the opposite. It's oppositeville. I mean, it's the opposite of what they say is going on. Not to mention the fact that, sure, there's been some warming of the planet, some rises in temperature, sure. But there's a lot of evidence that that's actually a good thing. That if there are any effects at all, it's a net positive effect. Matt Ridley has written about this and talked about this a lot, by the way. He's very good on that.
For the prospering of life, the planet does go in cycles. The planet goes in cycles of temperature. And for the prospering of life, it's better to be living in a time of warming than an ice age or a time of cooling.
Right.
The Black Death, the Black Plague was during a time of global cooling. Yeah, The ice age that wiped out a ton of life was the ice age.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
When it's hotter, bacteria lives more, life lives more.
Yeah, and I think you can grow more food too. I think that's what Matt Ridley has said. I think that's easier to grow food. And, there is no crisis in food except that caused by war and sanctions. But, we were doing great in terms of food production until the Ukraine war because of the Norman Borlaug Green Revolution. It's an amazing thing that the left just totally discounts.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. No, governments absolutely want complete control over every economic interaction, which a climate credit, a carbon tax or a carbon credit system would absolutely establish. It's well documented that they want a global bank to issue out these carbon credits. That just definitely seems where this direction is going. And it makes me sad for my generation that our rebellious impulses are being co-opted, and a lot of smart young people are being taken up by this apocalyptic worldview.
yo, your generation is pathetic. I have almost no hope for it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't. There's very little among Zoomers that I think is worthwhile politically. I don't know, except they're less racist, I suppose. Although I think that means they're just more anti-racist, which is not actually good, because anti-racist is an ideology, is a religion, which is actually racist. So I'm not even sure they are less racist than like Gen Xers. I think Gen Xers are the least racist. I think we're the best.
Mm-hmm.
I think my generation's the best.
And
I am I am the captain of my generation. It's Kiefer Sutherland and I are the co-captains of the Gen X people. And I'm here to say that we're very proud of what we've done. And we're very disappointed with the generations before and after us. And we would like for all of you to step up. Boomers, millennials, Zoomers, we need to see more from you because we've been working our asses off. And we made the world better, but y'all have not.
The joke is at Thanksgiving, Gen X and Gen Z are the cool cousins. Like, we're the ones who hang out and treat everything as a joke. And the boomers and millennials are the asshole cousins. They're the ones judging everybody and yelling at everybody.
I can vibe with that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Zoomers that I'm closest with are you and my son. So I'm actually, you guys are great. It's just the rest of you. The rest of that generation, I don't know about.
Yeah. Every rebellious impulse is co-opted and used as a argument for more authority and more control over shit. Especially in campus culture, every time something goes wrong, the administration has to step in and they have to be in charge of everything. The constant victim points that you get for being a victim class. Yeah, it's exhausting and it's depressing.
Some people want power over other people, and the rest of us don't. And that's just the way it is. I don't have any explanation as to why those people want power, but they do. Mm-hmm. And we just have to be always vigilant about them and not let them have it unless it serves us. Curtis Yarvin has a lot to teach us about that. If they are going to be, good colonizers and fix our infrastructure and, bring electricity to Baghdad or whatever it is, then you can welcome the colonizers. But otherwise, you want to make sure that those megalomaniacs who want power over us don't have it. Anyway, that's a longer conversation. We're going to be dropping Curtis Yarvin and Ben Burgess, the great debate of Chicago soon, right? Tomorrow or very soon?
We're going to have about, 6 hours of Patreon content as well, and about
ridiculous historic content. Yeah, the Ben Burgess, Curtis Yarvin debate, which everyone's been talking about. We're about to release it to the world. It's something else. And then we have interviews with Curtis, with Ben, with Batya. We have a debate between Batya and Curtis. Also, lots of stuff that's coming out really soon in the next few days. So everyone stay tuned. Right now, though, if you want to join us at Unregistered Live, all you got to do is become a patron. Very low price. Go to patreon.com/unregistered. Sign up. You'll see the URL and you can come on in and we have a lot of fun and we talk shit about everything, including what Michael and I just talked about here. Michael, great job again, as always, and I will see you on the other side.
Yeah, same. It's been real.
All right, man. Thank you.